Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We know you value your time, so we get straight to the point, breaking down complex topics so you don't have to. And today, well, we're diving deep into something that could have a pretty big impact, especially if you rely on servers for, well, just about anything these days.
Yeah, that's right. We're looking at a critical security vulnerability, a real nasty one. It was recently discovered in software that's, well, it's pretty much everywhere. It comes from American Megatrends International, or AMI, you might have heard of them.
Hmm.
And specifically, it's their MegaRAC Baseboard Management Controller software, BMC for short. Now, this BMC, it's not just some little add-on. It's actually fundamental to how a lot of servers are managed, especially remotely.
Okay, so right off the bat, why should our listeners care about this MegaRAC BMC thing? What does it even do?
So imagine you have a server, right? Could be anywhere, a data center across the country or even across the world,
Hmm.
and something goes wrong. Maybe the operating system crashes or you need to troubleshoot something. Well, this BMC, it's like a backdoor, a lifeline to that server, like a separate way to access it, even if the main system is down.
Exactly. It's called out-of-band management. It lets administrators diagnose problems, even fix them remotely. It can even help recover a server if the operating system is completely kaput, all without having to physically be there.
So it's like a dedicated channel to the hardware itself, like having a direct line to the bare metal.
Right, and that's what makes it so powerful, especially for maintaining those huge server farms that power, well, pretty much everything we do online. But that's also what makes this vulnerability so scary. Because this MegaRAC BMC isn't just used by a few companies, it's actually integrated into the servers made by over a dozen major vendors. Think HPE, Asus, ASRock, all big players, and they supply a huge chunk of the cloud and data center infrastructure worldwide.
So this isn't just some isolated incident. We could be talking about a ripple effect across a vast portion of the internet as we know it. All right, so let's get to the heart of the matter. Just how bad is this vulnerability really?
Well, it's classified as critical. That's the highest severity rating. It's been assigned the tracking number CVE-2024-54085. And it's critical because it can allow attackers to completely hijack servers. They can even render them permanently unusable, essentially bricking them.
Breaking a server, wow, sounds like a worst case scenario. What would it take for an attacker to do that?
The scary part is how easy it seems to be to exploit this. The security researchers who found it, that's Eclipsium, they say remote attackers, and we're talking attackers who haven't even authenticated themselves, they can exploit this with very little effort. And even worse, it doesn't require any interaction from someone on the server side.
So no one on the other end has to click a link or download anything. That's really concerning. So how does the attacker actually get in?
So this vulnerability, it lets them bypass all the usual security checks. This includes something called redfish, which is, well, think of it as a common language for managing servers remotely. It also affects the communication between the server's main system and the BMC. And once they're in, they basically have admin rights, full control over the hardware.
And with that kind of access, what could they actually do? What's the worst that could happen?
The damage could be extensive. We're talking about the possibility of them installing malware, ransomware. They could even manipulate the server's firmware, which is like messing with the core programming of the hardware itself.
That's way beyond just stealing data.
Right. They could potentially brick motherboard components, and not just the BMC, even the main system BIOS or UEFI,
Yeah.
the thing that boots up the server. Then there's the risk of physical damage. They could overvolt components, fry them, basically. And a more immediate threat is forcing the servers into a constant reboot loop, one that's nearly impossible to stop.
Yikes. So how did anyone even find this vulnerability? Were they actively looking for it, or was it more of a lucky break?
Well, the researchers at Eclipsium, they actually stumbled upon it while they were analyzing some patches AMI had released for a previous vulnerability. That one was CVE 2023-54085, another bypass issue they found back in July 2023. So this software, it's definitely been getting some extra attention from security researchers lately.
So they're fixing one problem and find a whole other, even bigger problem. Not exactly a good sign, is it? We talked about HPE, Asus, and ASRock having confirmed that some of their products are affected, but is it just them or are there more?
Well, while Eclipsium has confirmed it specifically in the HPE Cray XD670, the Asus RS720A, E11 RS24U, and ASRockRack servers, their assessment is that there are probably many more devices out there that are also vulnerable, and that might include products from other vendors too.
Makes sense. If over a dozen major vendors are using this MegaRAC BMC software, chances are this vulnerability is a lot more widespread than we initially thought. Did the researchers have any idea just how many servers out there might be exposed right now?
They did some digging using Shodan, which is kind of like a search engine for internet-connected devices, and they found over 1,000 servers that look like they could be attacked directly from the internet using this vulnerability. But remember, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real number of vulnerable servers, the ones tucked away in private networks and data centers, could be much, much higher.
1,000 exposed servers, and that's just what they could find easily. Not a comforting thought. And you mentioned that this isn't the first time MegaRAC has had security issues. Is that right?
Unfortunately, no. This is part of a bigger pattern they've been seeing. Clipsium calls it BMC&C. They actually disclosed 5 other vulnerabilities in late 2022 and early 2023. Those were CVE-2024-54085, CVE-2022-40259, CVE-2022-40242, CVE-2022-2827, CVE-2022-40258, and those also had the potential for hijacking servers, making them unusable or infecting them with malware.
Wow, so this has been an ongoing issue for a while then. Seems like this BMC software might be kind of a weak link in the whole server security chain.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it gets even more concerning when you look at some of those earlier vulnerabilities, like CVE 2022-40258. That one involved weak password hashing for the Redfish interface. It means attackers could potentially crack the administrator passwords for the BMC much easier.
Weak password hashing, that's like security 101. It sounds like someone could potentially combine these older weaknesses with this new critical bypass and make things even worse.
Exactly. And to add to that, in July 2023, they found another vulnerability. This one's CVE 2023-34330, a code injection vulnerability. Attackers could use it to inject malicious code through those same Redfish interfaces. So the worry is that they could chain all these vulnerabilities together to really dig in and take control.
So we've got a history of vulnerabilities, this new critical one, and the potential for them to be used together. What's the situation right now? Is anyone actively exploiting this new flaw yet?
As of right now, no. Eclipsium hasn't seen any signs of active exploitation of CVE 2024-54085 in the real world. No reports of attacks or exploit code floating around. But, and this is a big but, they've also said creating an exploit for this wouldn't be that hard. Part of the reason is that the MegaRAC BMC firmware, it's not encrypted. So reverse engineering it, finding those weaknesses, it's much easier.
Not encrypted, and easy to exploit. Not exactly reassuring. Sounds like it's only a matter of time before someone starts taking advantage of this. So for our listeners out there who manage servers, what should they be doing right now?
The advice from the researchers is pretty clear. Patch now. AMI, Lenovo, and HPE, they all released patches on March 11th. So if you're responsible for any servers using AMI, MegaRAC, BMC, make sure those patches are applied ASAP. This is a top priority.
Patching is crucial, but is there anything else they can do to reduce the risk while they're working on those updates?
Absolutely. First, make sure your AMI, MegaRAC, BMC instances aren't directly accessible from the internet. Keep them on internal networks, behind firewalls, and always keep a close eye on your server logs. Look for anything unusual, anything that might suggest someone's trying to get in or has already gotten in.
Okay, so patch, isolate, and monitor. Great advice.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that AMI is a big player in the BIOS and BMC world. What does that mean for the rest of the tech landscape?
Well, because AMI supplies so much of the core firmware like BIOS and BMC, any vulnerabilities in their products can have a huge ripple effect. Eclipsium has said that this one vulnerability could potentially impact products from over a dozen different server manufacturers. So even if you don't buy directly from AMI, you could still be at risk if your server vendor uses their technology.
So it's not enough for just AMI to fix the problem. All those other vendors have to incorporate those fixes into their own updates and get them out to their customers. Sounds like a long and complicated process.
It often is with these kinds of supply chain vulnerabilities. And like Eclipsium pointed out, patching firmware at this level isn't always simple. It often means taking the server offline for a while, which can be disruptive, but with this vulnerability, it's a risk worth taking.
Definitely. Better be safe than sorry. So, to sum up for everyone listening, we've been talking about a critical security vulnerability, CVE 2024-54085. It's in AMI's MegaRAC BMC software, which is used by loads of servers from major vendors, including those that power a lot of the cloud and data centers we all rely on. This flaw lets attackers, even those without any credentials, take full control of vulnerable servers. We're talking about malware, ransomware, messing with the firmware, even causing physical damage. And while no one's actively exploiting it yet, experts say it's pretty easy to do, partly because the firmware isn't encrypted. So if you manage any servers, go patch them right now with the updates from March 11th. Make sure those AMI MegaRAC instances aren't directly exposed to the internet, and keep a close watch on those server logs.
Right. And speaking of security, we want to thank our sponsor, Stonefly. They're leaders in enterprise storage, backup, and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. If you're looking for secure, ransomware-proof storage, Stonefly has got you covered. They offer air-gapped and immutable storage. You can contact them at sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo.
And that brings us to a final thought for all of you. We've talked about how important this BMC is for managing and recovering our essential server infrastructure. It's really the foundation of our control over these vital systems. So, what does it say about the security of our interconnected world when vulnerabilities like this are found at such a fundamental level? It really makes you think about the hidden risks in our increasingly complex digital world.
It certainly does. And if you're worried about the security of your data and infrastructure, remember Stonefly. They're experts in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. They offer secure, ransomware-proof storage, including air-gapped and immutable options. To learn more or to schedule a demo, contact sales@stonefly.com.